Now we're going to have the candidates receive questions that they haven't heard before from our panelists, and we'll start with Robert Gabrick.
I am here to represent business. My wife and I, in my very lengthy bio earlier, have operated a restaurant in Carefree for 10 years. Very lucky and very privileged. And as you've started discussing, Carefree gets a lot of their ability to function from sales tax revenue. And we've been fortunate to contribute substantially in the collecting of sales tax. Unfortunately, we do not live in Carefree. Wish we did, we do not. So it creates, there's two sides to this. There's the business side that funds the town. There is the citizens who vote you in. Can you explain your positions on where you would sit in that relationship between citizen and business? And if you would like, please feel free to use the sign controversy that has grabbed a substantial amount of the business community and the citizenry over the last 2 years. Thank you.
We can start with Michael Craig.
So I'm not sure if I really understand the question of where I would sit between business and taxes.
No, business and citizenry.
Business and citizenry. Well, I think the sign issue, in my view, and again, this is my view, I think the issue of the signs and the placards and all that is a finger in the dike. I think it is an act of desperation, in my opinion, to try to grab people who drive down a road to pull in here. And my plan is very different than that. I think that's chasing the tail. I think we need to find a very vigorous way to market this town as hard as we can and to attract more businesses up here so that when people set out to leave somewhere, they're going to have a destination that they're coming to because they want to come here. And so in that regard, I think getting in front of the train and creating that plan and making it actionable would take away a lot of the concerns we have today. Because what's happening today, in my view, is this. It's shrinking. It's not growing. And so my desire would be to focus on the growth. It's difficult to cut yourself to profitability. And again, this is where I intend to spend my efforts in trying to resolve this. I think what is the biggest issue that's facing Carefree is, again, how do we manage our future? And that's the space where I have significant expertise to help there.
Michael, as a follow-up there, what would be your plan for, in a few words?
Sure. Well, first off, you can't do strategic planning in a few words. But let me try to articulate it as best I can. So in another life, I did strategic planning for a large Fortune 400 company, and I've done it in many other companies. And so what strategic planning is about is really bringing together the various factions that are out there. The citizens, the businesses, the council, the government. You bring these groups together, and we work together to develop a plan. And I have a whole process to run people through. And we can come out with a crisp, specific plan that we all can hang our hat on. Something that sets the goal, that aligns the objectives, that develops the accountabilities for what needs to get done and when it needs to get done. And I would submit to you that absent that kind of rigor, the future is a very slippery place. So, in a nutshell, I hope that's answered that question.
Thank you. Melissa, how would you respond to Mr. Gabrick's question?
I think that satisfying our citizens means that most of them do not want any property tax. And so we have to be concerned about the sales tax revenues. They want services like good roads, fire protection. And our businesses want people brought into town. So we need to have, as Mike has just mentioned, without actually calling it this, but an economic development plan. And we have been working toward that in the last year and a half with a 5-step milestone plan, which is to continue marketing the town. 2 is to reinvest in our town infrastructure. 3 is to incentivize and partner with our commercial building owners and landowners in town. Partner with developers to get their advice so that we can hone in on key businesses for key areas. And then target market for additional businesses that's going to help shape and keep the charm of our town.
Okay, a little follow-up question here is, how do you envision development? What's your point of view on development in the town of Carefree?
By development, I'm talking about filling up those 40-some empty storefronts that we currently have, providing better parking, and knowing that we've got more businesses, more reasons for people to come up and spend more than 15 minutes in the gardens. They can walk around the town and have more businesses to visit.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Schwan?
The sign controversy left me in a very comfortable position. When you get complaints from both sides, you're probably at the right place. Our businesses would like signs that are a bit more obvious. Our citizens like subdued signs. The signs we have on our arterial street that direct people into our business center are effective and seem to work right now. Carefree does have a plan as to how to go forward. We have to balance bringing people into town and businesses. Which comes first, chicken or the egg? Which comes first? More people, more business. We have to build them both together. So to how I would put myself, I'd like to think I'm in the middle right now. The citizens were unhappy with some signs. We fixed that problem. Now we have signs that work for the citizens and they help the businesses.
Thank you, Mayor. Follow-up to that question is, how would you look at the signage issue if you were a business that did most of their business in the evening when you couldn't see the signs?
The staff and I have talked about the current signs and we recognize there's a deficiency and we have a plan. Next year, actually this year, next fiscal year in July, we need to redo all the names of businesses on the signs. We've talked to Howard Bertram, who made those signs. He's come up with a plan to address it so that the signs will be as aesthetically pleasing as they are now, but replace the existing paint with reflective white paint that we know that works at night. So we have a plan to fix that. We'll put out 1 or 2 test strips, see if they work, and then go forward. So we think we have a plan to keep the signs aesthetically pleasing and fix the visibility problem at night.
Thank you. John Crane?
Well, I would look at merchants and restaurant owners in our town as constituents. And even if you don't live in our town, you're part of the engine that makes the town work. And so your inputs to us are as important as people who vote. And if we're talking about signs, again, your inputs are critical. In fact, as a merchant, you know what signs work and what don't work. So we have to weigh that. On the other hand, we have to weigh that against or in our effort to maintain the character of the town. So between the two, we find a balance. Now, hopefully that's what we did on the last signage discussion. So when we work to improve the town, if we look at efforts to make the town more economically viable, I mean, your inputs from the commercial establishments are critical to what we do.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up to that one is a question, what would be some of the things that you would suggest would make the town more economically viable?
There's improvements that we can do to the town core. For example, we've talked about Vice Mayor's heading up a committee looking at improvements to the amphitheater. I'm on that committee. That's a great idea because it'll expand the months of use for the amphitheater. We can tap into our experiences with the Christmas Festival. We festival that Joe Gimmel's made such a success. Because we know that that's successful with marketing information. We know who comes. We can distill the information we get from websites and social media to figure out what turns those people on. We can come up with an alternative program that can work in an off month, say the summertime, and we can come up with a successful plan to bring people into the town.
Thank you. Glenn Miller.
Well, as we all know, our merchants are our economic engine. They support the services that we receive for no property tax. The most important services in my book has always been public safety, police, fire. We need the merchants, and we need to do what we can. Our backs are to the main drags, Carefree, Tom Darlington and Cave Creek Road. We're kind of, our backs are facing it. That's partly why we put signs out there. We do plan to do more. Marketing, we've been marketing now, this is the third year. We went to an outside agency this year, spent a little bit more money on marketing. The idea is, just like in development, build the roads first and then the people come. That's what we're trying to do with the outside marketing, the festivals, bring a lot of people into town, especially the Christmas festival. We need to bring people into town. The marketing, like I say, is quite a big one. But more importantly, starting this year, we really need to work on economic development. I'm not an economic development guy. I'm a hands-on guy, construction, public safety. But there is people on this council and people that are running that know economic development. And I think this year we've got a lot of things done in the past year of this council. I think we're going to really concentrate on the economic development. There's a lot of facets to it, as the Vice Mayor mentioned, and John Crane, that we have these capital improvement projects. That's all part of building the road, and we're going to work on getting our sales tax revenue up.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. As a follow-up, have we seen any kind of measurable improvement as a result of our marketing efforts in the town?
Not really. I follow the financials quite closely. The local sales tax is the really important number I like to look at. For some reason, it's down a little bit this year. But then again, when we had our last meeting, our financials, we haven't seen December yet, as far as the monthly financials go. But I suspect next council meeting and every month after that, we're going to see our sales tax go up because it is the season. But the marketing, it takes years. It doesn't, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't build marketing within months. It's going to take a couple of years to really get it out there.
Okay, thank you. Marty Selfman.
Okay, so signage. Why not just jump right in? I think when it comes to things about economic development, and to answer your first question, I don't see a difference between the business and the residents in that business is what lets residents live here. So we kind of have to keep the business happy, but as I've said it sometimes, if you destroy that which makes the place nice for people to come to, then you'll have the most well-advertised businesses that are empty. So there's a balance there somehow of how we do that. Signage is a question, and again, sometimes I've said this and people haven't liked it, is you don't rely on the signs that are on the arterials to locate the specific stores. You need to sort of sub-brand where you are. So if you're in Indian Village, or if you're in the Mashie Center, you're in a certain area, you sub-brand that and the signs direct you to that area, and then the signs take you to your specific business. Because if you try to get all of the businesses out there on the main road, it isn't going to happen. So we need to come up with a plan that allows us to direct people first to this area, then to a smaller area, then to the actual business, and I think that can work. And again, we're playing with it.
But I have a follow-up. What are your thoughts on how we direct that?
You mean the staged approach towards signage?
Yes.
Well,
not necessarily signage, but to development and getting people into the town.
What I'd love to see, and maybe it's because I'm a car nut, but I can't help but notice every Saturday morning I go to a little car event that's in town. And let me tell you, those folks have a few extra dollars lying around, just a couple. It would be nice if we could embrace some of that as part of our identity. Cave Creek has done a fairly good job of identifying that with the motorcycle crowd and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't mind us being known as a place for those kind of high-class events. It couldn't hurt.
Thank you. Mike Farrar?
Well, I too believe that merchants are a valued members of our community. There is congruity, though, between, I believe, the needs of the merchants and really the lifestyle choices our community or our citizens wish for, desire for. I was, speaking of signs, if any of you know me, I was deeply involved in redesigning our merchant signs that we see on our arterial streets. And I spent quite a bit of time working with the merchants. Rob, I went and spoke with you and Linda about the signs, and I spoke with our chamber, our local business community, and to see what their needs were and what we could do to really make our signs maybe a little bit less obvious, more attractive, more subtle, and more characteristic of Carefree. I am a business owner myself. I hold 2 MBAs. I understand the needs of a small business owner. And I understand, and I live here as well. And I appreciate the fact I do not have a property tax, and so I value what our merchants provide me. And it provides for a greater economic development in our community. I enjoy that these services are close to my home. And economic development is really a broader spectrum than just simply increasing retail sales tax revenue. It's increasing the desirability to live in a community so that our property appreciates in value. We're looking for alternative ways to bring in outsiders into our community so that our merchants can thrive and we can prosper as a community.
Okay, Mike, that's it on time. But as a follow-up, what are the things that we are looking at to bring out other people into the town from an economic standpoint?
Well, in our town, we currently have about 15 to 20 acres of available commercial land. As you know, we're a limited community. We're landlocked. We have about 3,000 residents. So I think what we're doing now as the current council, we have a marketing agency on board we work closely with. That was a long process. The things we're doing to enhance our community with our gardens and our street lamps or merchant signs. I'm on the splash pad committee. What we're doing with the amphitheater. We're looking for things that we can provide in a community that would really be a destination for those that live here or outside of our community, so that our retailers can benefit from that.
I think Mr. Gabrick raises a question here that really is one of the most important questions that we as a town have to face. If you look at what the town has, it has a long-range plan, which was enacted on November 6th of last year, a little over 3 months ago. And if you read through this well-written document, what it says, all of us, we don't want it to change. We moved here because it was quiet, it was safe, we could walk, it was spacious, there were dark skies, there was a lot of land around us, and that's the way we want to keep it today and in the future. Now the issue becomes, how do we do that? Because sales tax is literally 50% of our revenue. So we must compromise and balance between these two elements. The success of our retailers, all of them, is integral to the continuation of doing what we want to do, literally as residents that live here. So, you look at the future, what is coming up. If you look at the statistics, 82% of Carefree residents typically shop at the Summit. If you talk to Mr. Neese and you look at the development plans that are coming up for Carefree Highway to the west of Cave Creek Road, it's enormous. It's going to be, it isn't, we're going to look back on the good old days of today before all these other restaurants and competitive ones come in. So we have to do things, and I think some of the things we can do, we have an excellent start. These fairs, different kinds of things like that, perhaps. I mean, we're seeing positive responses. Yes, I hear people up at the post office, I wish I could find a place to park, etc. But that's a temporary inconvenience for something which is bringing in revenue to facilitate all of us living as we want to live. Perhaps we can strengthen some of these fairs. That would be the first area that I would take a look at.